Hello and welcome to Channel Hope Podcast, where we share stories each fortnight to inspire and help people channel hope through life's challenges. I'm your host, Rata Campbell. In this episode, my friend Jacinda Crothers shares her incredible journey toward becoming a multifaceted life coach and mentor. Her story is one of transformation, resilience, and self-determination after experiencing severe workplace bullying. We discuss the importance of mindfulness, creativity, and creating community on the road to personal growth and making conscious decisions to live fully. Welcome, Jacinda.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You know, we've sat in your backyard or on the beach and hung out with our boys together, and we've had loads of conversations about life in general. You've got quite a different approach to well-being that I think is really important and really interesting that we'd like to explore and talk about today. What was your life like growing up here, and who were some key people in your life?
I grew up in rural Bay Plenty, actually. 4 acres, orchard, pool, tree house that my granddad built. And it was like a typical New Zealand upbringing, bare feet and lots of animals, lots of nature. We went to a rural school, which is now so much bigger than it used to be. I'm a twin, so my twin brother and I started school together. So just that gratitude for freedom, I think, from a young age, like really sensing that access to nature, which still obviously lives with me fully, the privilege of having two parents that are teachers or were teachers, being able to have time with them in the school holidays and growing up. And one of the things I think that really shaped my childhood was actually moving away from the Bay. So mum and dad took us overseas for a year. They swapped houses, jobs, cars and cats with the family in the Midlands in England, and we lived in a semi-detached house, so we actually had the neighbours through the wall. And of course, in England, it's a lot colder than it is here. We had snow that we got to experience.
It's like the complete opposite side of the planet.
Yeah.
And despite the similarities between us, it's quite a cultural shift, isn't it?
It was a big shift, and it was incredible. Like, I love to chat. I'm a very social person. So being a 7-year-old and arriving in a classroom, and I was lucky because I had my brother, so we were together, obviously the twins. So we were 7 and my little brother was 4. In the UK, you start school at 4. So he went in as this teeny tiny little 4-year-old dude, and we just had this experience of being from the other side of the world and being a novelty and experiencing culture that we never had before. And mum and dad are big travellers. Before we were around, mum and dad did this huge OE, as most Kiwis do, and they were on a bus from London to Johannesburg. So they went all through Europe, and then obviously there were boats involved. But they talk about this adventure that they went on with about 20 other friends now, but strangers, and their adventures going through the Sahara Desert and sending telegrams back to their parents. They climbed Kilimanjaro, and hearing their stories and seeing their slides. So Dad has always been really into his photography and loves the natural world, and so he was taking pictures, and then he'd do these slideshows. So many stories to tell, and Dad's a geography teacher, so he loves to teach and the wisdom that he imparts in the world. These slideshows of like animals in Africa and safari and Maasai and like just incredible captures of this other world.
Sounds like he was an amazing man. Like he basically just was part of the fabric of Tauranga Boys College there, and still remains there even outside of retirement. He can't help himself.
Yeah. And mum as well, actually. Mum was at Automotive College for 20 odd years. And so that real investment in growth and that investment in learning and supporting others to be the best versions of themselves is a strong thread through my family, for sure. Dad taught there for 44 years. There is such a breadth of influence. You know, I went into a yoga class the other day, and the guy beside me on the yoga mat was, "Oh, you're Arctic swimmer girl." And I was like, "I swim every day." And I was like, yes, I am. But then he was followed up with, "And your dad taught me. That's how I know who you are." So Yeah.
I mean, it just must feel really, really neat to know the level of influence that he's had, not only in your life, but in the lives of others. And I can completely see how that's translated into what you're doing now. And I guess that's why when I was looking back at what you were doing career wise initially, I was kind of surprised. Talk us through your initial career choice as a radiation therapist. I'd imagine that part of the appeal was working with people who were, in need of support, particularly cancer patients.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's funny because I truly believe and trust that everything that we do is for a reason of growing our hearts. One of the things that really drew me into radiation therapy to begin with, not only just having a science background, and I was always the kid at school that was like, I'm doing the sensible and choosing all the things that I think is going to stand me in good stead, secretly being super jealous of the girls that are walking around with big art folders. But I didn't feel like that was a pathway for me when I was navigating my way through school. So I chose the sensible science route. And when I had a conversation with our careers advisor, she was like, oh, there's this new thing it's not new, but it was a new transition from a diploma course into a degree course through the Wellington School of Medicine. And it was really about connection with people and to support people at, a really challenging time of life. Working with cancer patients is raw and is as real as it gets. You meet people that are on the edge, that lives have been completely changed in the process. And there is such beauty in being able to witness that. And also the flip side of that, the courage, the humor, the hope, the love
Yeah.
that is expressed through
Yeah.
that process. And so, it was a really emotional choice. Like, I always lead with my heart, and I love to share that in all of the work that I teach, and the years that I spent treating probably thousands of patients, not only in New Zealand, but abroad as well. It taught me so much about facing mortality and how we choose to carry this as humans. One of the books that speaks about this beautifully is a book by Michael Singer called The Untethered Soul, and I've been recently revisiting this. And there is a chapter in his book that talks about death. And fact is that we're all faced with this. Always, from the moment of our birth, we are facing that.
Literally just said that exact line to someone this morning. Literally. And it's a fact. There's no
Yeah,
way
it is.
around it, right?
Correct. But the
Yeah.
thing is that especially in our society, and we like to disconnect from that. The thing about working in an oncology department is it is front and center all of the time. One of the things that Michael talks about in his book, which coins it so beautifully, is actually, what are you doing with life? When I was working with patients, when I was working with their families, it really showed me this fragility of the human spirit and the impermanence, like this truth of impermanence, that nothing is guaranteed. How do we allow ourselves to open to that possibility? Like, it's our human tendency just to grasp, to hold on. We're always looking for more guarantees, more certainty, more time, when reality is we don't have any of that. We only have now.
Fully agree. Having been on the flip side of cancer journey to some
Mm.
extent with our son,
Yeah.
you learn pretty quickly that to try and control any aspect of what's going on there is foolhardy, and it actually just makes an already difficult journey even harder. It's a really weird feeling to have to let go. It actually makes a lot of sense and makes life a lot better and easier to let go of that level of control.
There's like a liberation that is in that. And often people don't face that until something happens. And it's often something traumatic that pushes us towards that way of thinking, that way of being. But
Yes.
what I love to teach now is that we don't have to wait for those things. We don't have to wait for those big things to happen in life.
I feel that you can speak really well to that fact. We don't need to wait until we, encounter a really big life issue or trauma in order to make that shift. You can do it at any point, at any time, and it is a choice. It's a
100%.
choice.
Oof, the choice that a lot of people are not willing to make because comfort is easy. And the thing that pushes us to the edge of our comfort is often that thing the diagnosis, the death,
Yes.
the relationship breakup, whatever it is. And it's that pushes us to the edge, and then we have to make decisions. This is the beauty of understanding and the beauty of self-reflection and the beauty of mindful practice, is it gives us the tools that it allows us to be able to support these internal struggles that we have. Creating joy for ourselves is not the absence of hardship. If we get to experience the shitty things, but also still choose to be uplifted in the process. Like
You said earlier something that really struck a chord with me is that, people think that by not making any level of change in their life, that there's a level of comfort around that. Once you move away from that mindset and that way of being, it's actually uncomfortable to stay. For me, I personally, once you make that shift, there's deep discomfort in staying put and trying to hang on to and control situations. With that career choice, like I know you ended up moving away from that. How did that come about?
So I moved from the hospital into corporate, and that was like a natural progression, working for the company that made the radiotherapy equipment. So I was teaching staff and therapists and physicists and doctors. So I spent probably my 20s and 30s traveling the world. Like I spent the summer in Siberia. I was in Turkey a lot with work, and then I was in Latin America and Asia, and we lived in Singapore for a few years. So, there was a lot of travel, corporate work from a training perspective, and then into the sales and marketing side. And then I transitioned into another company. Oh, it was a real challenge for me. Ended up experiencing corporate bullying, and I haven't had that before. It was something that came completely left field. We were living in Singapore. Oh, no, actually, this was before. So when we were living in Singapore, I was like, oh, I love color. I love design. My arty side was like wanting to come out. My twin brother's an artist. Actually, one of his paintings is behind me. And so I studied interior design. I was like, right, I'm going to do this as well, because this is something that I feel really passionate about. And so I started exploring. I was doing a lot of work in India. And if you've been to India, or if you've ever seen documentaries and things about India, so it's such a beautiful, spiritually connected, soulful place that does make incredible textiles. And so I was like, right, let's do something like this. So I actually started my own business, creating organic bedding. Like there's all of these things. I'm just like, ugh. I was diagnosed with unexplained infertility, which affects 25% of women. And so despite all of the tests, despite Dan having all of the tests, I put it down to this, the stress that I was under in experiencing this work situation, which I had no control over at the start, or I felt like I had no control over. And so I ended up making some really tough decisions around how I wanted to feel. And that meant walking away from corporate. And so I had this business that I was building in the background. And so I went fully into that. And that was the thing that opened my eyes up to a different way of being, to ignite my creative side for starters. So that was able to unleash. And then being surrounded by and in collaboration with a whole lot of women doing incredible things. I was like, whoa, oh my gosh, this is so cool. I got my first coach. I had my first experience of working with somebody, a woman, who was really supportive and really wanted me to win, and could see my blind spots and could give me the tools that I needed to support myself and stand up and speak my truth and just be like, you know what? This is not how I want to live. And I remember the first time that we had a conversation together, she asked me, like, what do you really want? And I just burst into tears, because in my mid 30s, I'd reached that point. I'd been successful on paper in my career. I'd done a whole lot of things. And this woman asked me what do I really want? And I was like, I don't actually know. I couldn't answer.
I actually just read something on LinkedIn, but Diary of a CEO guy. He had a similar conversation with someone recently, and even he had the same response even now. It's okay to not necessarily know or have a definitive direction or goal necessarily, other than that you are being intentional in doing what resonates with you and that makes you happy.
That's such a beautiful way of coining it. And one of the things that was really supportive for me in that process understanding was not so much knowing this is the, XYZ of what I want, but wanting to really tune into the feeling, to feel deeply connected to who I am. I want to know that my work makes a difference in the world. I want to be uplifting others through the way that I converse, through the way that I be, through the way that I am.
It completely makes sense to me too. Like, really, the money stuff ends up becoming almost secondary to your own joy being met and being able to express yourself in the ways that make sense to you.
So you nail the felt sense, you nail the alignment piece, and this is where the energetics come in. And then
Yes.
the money follows, but it's not first. I walked out of a multi six figure corporate salary into doing something on my own, which of course is going to be a dip. One of my coaches talks about Melanie Adlayer, and she says it's up and down on the way up. And the money, which is also important, like we're not bypassing this fact that we need heart-led spiritual entrepreneurs, people that are, taking a stand for humanity, to be richly compensated for that, because the more that we have financial backing, the more impact that we're able to have.
And valuing your skills and your abilities accordingly too.
Yeah.
Something else humans are really bad at doing and allowing others to do too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Because it's triggering. It's triggering for
Yeah.
people. My sense of joy, the way that I move through the world. And why is that? Because it's like holding up a mirror to maybe what you're not experiencing. And
Wow.
and
That's hard but true.
that's where, I don't know, internet trolls and haters and people that are keyboard warriors, why are they doing that?
Well, and workplace bullying as well.
Oh,
I find that
yeah.
that is essentially what it is. But I am curious about what kind of things you encountered because, I think it's important for people to hear that they're not alone in this. And there's a lot of this going on right now. I know a lot of people that are going through all kinds of crazy situations, and it's all based on exactly this about people wanting to dull other people's shine.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
grim. Yeah. What happened to you, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, and I think, reflectively, being bullied is probably one of the greatest things that have ever happened to me, because it pushed me into the direction that I am now. So I can be super grateful for that experience now. Ask me about that years ago. Not the case at all when I was in it.
Yeah.
Jesus, I thought the sky was falling down. I didn't know which way was up. My self-esteem, confidence was rock bottom. Oh, it was horrible. The way that I see it now and the way that I'm able to see it now is it's people that are um, projecting their fear, their experience, their need for certainty, their need for control onto you. And I can see that now. I couldn't when I was in it. And the more that I open up about this, the more people are like, oh my gosh, I've experienced that too. Oh my gosh, I've experienced that too. But it's about becoming aware of how we manage our way of moving through and understand the ways in which we communicate with each other. In my experience, there was a lot of undermining. There was a lot of public dismissal of my ideas in front of a team, taking credit for my work, belittling my contribution, um, excessive criticism, and not just about me, but about the team. And, I'd walk into work some days and there'd be stand up slanging matches over the whole workforce.
In a corporate environment?
Corporate environment. And it was just like, whoa, and it really shook me. No one likes conflict. But when it's in your face and you're just walking into an environment and there is yelling, like,
Yeah.
what area is this okay?
And adults as well. We
Adults,
teach our children not to behave in these ways. And here are grown people, yelling,
Yeah,
belittling,
yeah,
telling lies.
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, it's all very common at the moment. I think the thing that's alarming, though, is I'm finding or noticing that it's happening not just in the corporate environments, it's also happening in sectors that people like you and I care deeply about. We want to work and advocate to support people, but we've got this sort of stuff is being blown over into that sector. It's rife.
And the thing is, as well, is it's about this ability for us to take radical responsibility for our own selves, for our own
Yes.
safety, for our own hearts. And that is not happening when you are experiencing, when you are the victim of a bullying situation, the person that is bullying you or the person that's in that kind of authoritative figure, it may be, it may not be, it may be a colleague or a partner or whatever. They're not taking radical responsibility for their own shit. And I know this now. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on here, but I will. Sorry. This emotional intimidation. And that was one of the things that really rocked me to the core because I've had the privilege of growing up in a loving family and not having um, that experience of verbal abuse. And I know a lot of people have experienced that growing up. For me, that was like a real, like, whoa, okay, I don't know how to deal with this. And so my way of dealing with it was just to hide, to
Which is
hide.
fair and valid. It was really evident and really clear to me in the way that we met that you're just the right person to be doing what you're doing. You know, I remember it was a miserable day, and I was playing with my son, who was in the middle of leukemia treatment still, I believe, and we were alone, and it was normal for us to be alone everywhere we go. And then yourself and your son Mason, lovely boy, you guys rocked up together, and and we got to talking, and I don't actually remember what exactly we were talking about, but what I do remember is that the rain just came pouring down, and we'd known each other all of about 5 or 10 minutes, and you were busy inviting us back to your home to get shelter from the rain and for our boys to play. And I just thought, this is incredible. Like, you don't meet people. You might, but I don't. I don't meet people that are that open and generous of their time in their space. It just doesn't happen. So that for me was a trip, and I was like, well, that's an instant yes, And as you know, the rest is history. That happened about what 3 or 4 years ago, I want to say.
Something like that. It was a while ago.
It was a while ago. There's just a knowingness and a comfort there, and you're so open and lovely. And I really would love for you to just talk a little bit about your self-described role as an expansion coach and mindfulness mentor.
I was saying to Rata before this, she's like, what is your title? I'm like, I don't really know because it changes all the time. Depends on who I'm talking to. But, I
You
really
wear many
think
hats.
and the latest hat is the Queen of Joy. I do a lot of community work. I love hosting my weekly Joy Club Beach Edition, which is a meditation for our community and a swim. So I've done that for 4 years or so since we moved back to the Bay, and it's an opportunity to really deepen and understand this connection that we have with nature, with the sea. Like the sea has always been such a spiritual home for me. It is like my heart home. And when I was overseas, I'd be immersing in the water and just really feeling my connection to New Zealand through the water. Like I was hosting a meditation the other morning, and one of the women in the space was quite emotional coming out of the meditation, and it was because I was speaking into this, and she wouldn't mind me sharing this. She lost her father when she was a little girl, and he was lost at sea, and she felt this really deep connection to him through the water. And it's just like there's things like this that happen all of the time. When I first started doing it, I'd be on my own, but now there is a core group that journey with me every Wednesday morning through the whole year, through the winter time, through the summertime, through all of the changes of the seasons. And why is this important? Because it brings us back to here. It reminds us that we're human, that we have ups and downs, and that is our choice. Coming back to what you said in the beginning of the interview of how we choose to carry what it is that we're carrying in this moment. And so this morning, because it's a Wednesday, I was at the beach at 6 a.m. And one of the things that was really coming through for me during meditation was this phrase, and it's just a couple of words that I use and that I was guiding people on. This too matters.
Yes.
This too is welcome. And so, whatever we're experiencing, whether it be life, relationship, business, ups and downs, anything, when we become the embodiment of ourselves, when we're able to inhabit our heart space fully, we can welcome things in that would necessarily be like what we were talking about before, our ability to push things away.
The start of this session, even like we were having a hell of a time with technology, weren't we? And so I was a bit flustered and more than a bit flustered. And Jacinda took me through a lovely little exercise, just a breathing and mindfulness exercise that honestly, it took me right back to feeling better than I actually felt before we even got started. It was really just about taking that moment to stop and breathe. And but having it guided, I have to add, made it more pleasant.
This is the power of coaching. Is that you can't see your blind spots. This is why I invest in coaching in myself. I am a coach, and yes, I need to be coached because I can't see my own bullshit. I can't call myself out in the way that somebody else can. And so there's always a multifaceted approach to how we allow ourselves to inhabit our fullness. And for me, that has been embracing my creativity, being able to express in ways that I held myself back from, especially in corporate, especially in the hospital environment, even. There wasn't really a creative outlet for me to be able to show up in my fullest flamboyancy, with my colorful, bright outfits and my lipstick and sometimes a costume or my wedding dress or whatever. I love to bring that excitement, that joy into day to day because life is a celebration. We use the champagne glasses on a Tuesday. We use the dinner set that we got given that we're supposed to use for good now because now is the celebration. And I love leading people on a process of discovering that. And I do that in lots of different ways. So mindfulness definitely rooted always in the power of presence, but creativity as well is such a beautiful way to be able to access these parts of ourselves that we've often shelved for what we think is better in terms of productivity, in terms of earning a wage, in terms of, I don't have time for this.
Yeah, that word productivity bothers me something wicked,
Yeah.
because it's like the sum of our lives isn't really supposed to be, I feel, after all these experiences, you understand that that's not the point of all of this
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
You know, a productive life could be a deeply unhappy one.
And that's why so many people that seem to have it all are desperately unhappy because they haven't found this solace within themselves. And I know it sounds cheesy sometimes. You're like, what do you do? Oh, like, I lead people back to their hearts. But that is the truth of what it is. Understanding what it is that makes them tick, to reflect their deepest desires in the life that they lead. And it's different for everybody. It's so bespoke. It's so personal. And it's so beautifully liberating. The people I predominantly work with women. I have worked with men in the past, but yeah, my work now is predominantly with women. And I've had women that have come out of two cancer diagnoses and then started a wellness business, come out of corporate exile for 15 years and now taking high-end art commissions. The things that people are able to do when they put their mind to it and when they align this to how they really want to feel. It's that.
I love that so much. There's a lot of women that you're working with, and we almost have to wear more hats than we probably should. We bear children, we care for children. We're usually the one that has to stay home and be with the child, as well as, if we have our own hopes and dreams career-wise, it's a very difficult, road to travel. It's a lot to juggle, and it doesn't leave a lot of room for heart space, anything, to be frank. And I think it's important that people hear your message and maybe consider even talking to someone like you, because I know just in the short time that we've just been friends, I've learned so much, and I've been able to witness the beautiful mahi that you do with mums, women, people in general, and I know it helps. So good to have you on the show today, and what's next for you? Anything new that you've got planned for the new year?
My commitment to myself this year in guiding this group that I lead every week was upping that and swimming every single day this year. It's the commitment that you make to yourself. It's your commitment and your word to yourself. That's been my biggest teacher, I think, this year. That simple process, that simple act of getting my togs on, going to the beach every single day, rain, winter, sickness, through it all. Because what we mirror in one area of our life shows up in other areas of our life. So if I can show the fuck up in the pissing rain when I'm sick, try and find a beach, when I'm away from my home beach, when I'm trying to find water that isn't contaminated in Auckland.
You've done it. I see you in lakes and rivers and all sorts of things.
I am going to be guiding an experience for women to really access their hearts and do that through creative practice and through mindful coaching. So that's going to be launching, as well as supporting my amazing online community. So I have a digital community, Joy Club, which is an online membership where you get to access loads of teachings, as well as meditations, as well as ways in which to support you coming back to your heart and you opening into different areas of life, not just in business, not just in work, but in every area. On a personal note, I'm excited to see what my garden does. I'm obsessed with my garden, and nature is such a draw card for me. It's such a beautiful teacher. I'm drying things all the time. I'm making with my hands. I do wreath making workshops and creative workshops.
So I've been watching and following you, and yeah, I just love what you do. Thanks again for joining us, and wishing you all the best, my friend.
Thank you so much. Sending you so much love.
For more information about today's guest and the topic we discussed, check the description box for this episode. Join us again soon for more extraordinary stories from everyday people, shining the light of hope for others to follow.